Namaste and welcome to Urban Chatterati. This is Abhinav Prakash. And today I have with me Ashirwad Dwivedi, Assistant Professor of Economics at the Sri Ram College of Commerce, University of Delhi. Ashirwad, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Abhinav. Thanks for having me.
Ashirwad, we have seen that the Prime Minister Modi has recently launched e-rupee, which is a new kind of digital payment mechanism. And now we are also hearing you talk about some kind of central bank digital currency. Some consultation is going on. People are discussing these things that India should also have a digital rupee, maybe. So, what exactly is the central bank digital currency?
Yeah, Abhinav, it's the as you said, it's the hot topic of the day. I'm very sure that almost every central bank in the world is at least researching about central bank digital currency. And the official estimates are that almost 45 or 46 central banks are, almost ready with their design. It's a very very important issue of the day. Let's to address this question of what is central bank digital currency. Let's just go a bit back. The context is always very important, and in fact, in this case, it is very very important. Let's see what is money, what is currency, and then let's see what is central bank digital currency. Okay, let's see it very briefly. That as our society evolved, one of the fundamental problem was the problem of exchange. So you can't produce everything, I can't produce everything. We need to exchange at some level. The first answer to that was barter. But barter has this problem of double coincidence of wants. So I produce pen, you produce paper. We both should need at the same time pen and paper. Then only that exchange is going to happen. Okay. So somewhere there, people started the idea of money. So in terms of definition, anything that fulfills three major characteristics, that is medium of exchange, most importantly, store of value and unit of account, then that thing can be called as money. And these three properties are self-explanatory, so I'm not getting into the details of it. Now, anything that satisfies these three things can be called money. And historically, a lot of things have been money, from stones to cowrie cells to gold to silver to bronze. Everything is at some point of time, even paper, has been money. Now, what happened is money can be anything that satisfies these three things. Now, what is currency? Currency is any money that is backed by the sovereign. So it is something that is backed by the sovereign, or you can also say that, or it is backed by the central bank on the behalf of the sovereign. So that any money which has these characteristics, it becomes currency. Now, very simply, a lot of people might even be surprised when we say it like that, because you expect CBDC to be a very, a big technological thing. There is a technology behind it, but CBDC, it's simply a legal tender, a legal currency in the digital form. That's it. So it is your 5 rupee note, 10 rupee note, but it is in the digital form. So that would be the understanding or the definition of the central bank digital currency. When any country converts its legal tender, its legal currency into the digital form, that becomes central bank digital currency.
But then how is it the debit cards, credit card we're using as of now? Because see, I don't use cash and the physical cash as such anymore. I hardly use it. Everything is either Paytm, UPI, credit card, and so on. I don't know when was the last time I withdrew cash from the bank, So how is it different from that?
It is very different, Abhinav. So this question is, I was myself going to say this. Thanks that you asked. See, a legal tender is always the liability of the central bank. And it is the asset of the holder. So if you are holding a 10 rupee note, then it is the liability of the central bank, and it is asset for you. The digital money, the credit card, whatever you transfer to, let's say UPI and all, that's not technically the liability of the central bank. And that is the most fundamental difference. The transaction that you are talking about right now, the UPI, the RTGS, NEFT and all, the basis of all these things is a bank account. So you have a bank account where you put some of your money, that becomes basis of everything that you're talking about right now. So technically that is the liability of the commercial bank, which it is trying to fulfill by the fractional reserve system. Okay, and that is why it's not the direct liability of the central bank. I will come back to this point later on because this is very important to the understanding of CBDC. Right now, before we come to this, it is important to understand that why, like I said, that it is very important, it's a hot topic of the day, why suddenly central bank digital currency has become such an important thing. So basically, there are, like in everything, there are a lot of reasons. And so some countries are trying to issue CBDC, basically because of the practical reason, like Sweden, because they have almost 2% of their transaction in cash. So for their central bank, printing money, transporting money, storing money, this is all useless cost to them. So they want to issue, they just want to remove cash totally because people are anyway not using it. And so that is one reason for, that's why also Sweden is leader in this project. China and Sweden, these two countries are almost leading the CBDC project. The second important thing, according to me, and that's where the fundamental and also the interesting bit comes up, is at the heart of this, it is basically the age-old state versus free market thing. So what is happening is, apart from the three characteristics of money that I told you, there is something that is not often said but is extremely important. Is like a lot of other things, money also is a social construct. So anything can fulfill these three characteristics. But if people don't have trust in that and people are not willing to exchange it, then it is absolutely useless. So basically, there has to be some degree of trust. There's people, or there should be a network of people minimum that are willing to trade on that form of money. Now, recently, what has happened, and the flag bearer of that is Bitcoin, that a lot of digital private money has come up in the market. And Bitcoin, Ethereum, Libra, these are all, the famous examples. According to an estimate, currently there are 800 private digital currency in the market. So what has happened, specifically after Facebook issued Libra, what has happened is we all understand that the whole internet world, or to be more precise, the social media or digital marketing like Amazon and all, this is all network. So it is a network which is even bigger than nationality. So what is happening here is that there is a fear in the states, specifically most of the countries, that what if people start taking that currency more seriously than they are doing it right now. So no matter what you say, whether it's a legal tender or not, once people start accepting it as a medium of exchange, everything else will automatically fall in place. Or indirectly, you can say that there is a fear that the trust and the stability in the usual form of money is falling, and there is a threat to it because of the private digital currency. All private digital currencies are not cryptocurrencies, but broadly, Bitcoin and all is a prime example of that. So the state or the central bank is also trying to understand that if this happens, we have a problem. And secondly, some people also believe, and I also think that they are more right, is that if you see the historical evolution of money from metals to paper currency, digital is the next natural evolution of money. If you see, everything is digitizing, even in the financial sector, like you said, a physical form of money, bond, everything, even the financial sector is very much digitized now. So a lot of people say that this is the natural evolution for money, and money should it naturally become digital now. And if there is a demand for that, government must fulfill it. Otherwise, what will happen? It will be fulfilled by something else that might create a massive instability in the financial system. That's why there is a lot of thinking about central bank digital currency.
Yeah. But let's say, what might be the advantages and what might be the disadvantages of adopting a central bank digital currency?
One advantage in the case of Sweden, I already told you, like this is a clear advantage. The other advantage, which is very clearly stated, is something like financial inclusion. Okay, but before I get into that, I want to tell you that the advantages and disadvantages largely depend on what architecture of CBDC one country adopts. Okay, so it is yet to be. It's not yet finalized. No country has done it officially. It's all pilot here and there. But until unless you clearly say what design you are adopting, it's very difficult to say pros and cons. Okay, but if we have to broadly talk about pros and cons, so one is that you can reduce the cost of printing money and store when people are not using it. Second is that it can bring up financial inclusion. And the third thing is also that there is a technological advantage of settlement being between banks and all happening very quickly. But again, that depends on what model you adopt. And also, it's a very important question for a country like India, because India is a leader in digital payments. Like you are there at the top with UPI, NEFT, RTGS and all.
And I don't rupee as well.
Yeah, and you have e-rupee as well now. Basically, I don't know there is any other country which allows 1 rupee value of transaction digitally. So you are there at the very top. So I don't know in terms of settlement what you're going to gain, but definitely financial inclusion, and e-rupee is the best example of that. So you take. Although e-rupee is not, CBDC is not even close to it. CBDC is creating money. E-rupee is basically money already there, but you're transferring it in a very good way. But look what is happening. So that's why I think that this is one step towards, or you can say that for a better understanding of CBDC, this will really help how e-rupee is working. So what e-rupee does, this is a perfect example of technology solving the problem of financial exclusion. So e-rupee is basically a QR code or a SMS string, which is prepaid, and you, the receiver of that, do not need any bank account or do not even need fancy mobile phones. If you have the simple mobile phone where a SMS can be given. So let's take an example. I want to give you ₹100, let's say. You do not have a bank account. You live in a rural area where you do not have internet. You do not have a fancy app in your phone and all. So what do? I send you an SMS on your mobile phone, which has already value of ₹100. I think 11 banks are already participating in this. So if you are a customer of those 11 banks, you can easily transfer that ₹100 into e-rupee. I send it to you on, or let's say my grandmother who's living in the village, ₹100. And the purpose of that can be predefined. You go to the service provider, let's say she want to buy rice from a shop. She goes to the shop, she shows the e-rupee. I send her, the bank will send an OTP that will be verified, and that's done. You don't need internet, you don't need a bank account for doing this. It will simplify the benefit transfer for the government in a revolutionary way. So there will be no middlemen. So for example, again, another thing will be, let's say government want to give some money to a specific section of people in our country for vaccination, let's say, okay, they can do it very simply through e-rupee. Nobody is required. You go to the vaccination center, show the QR code or SMS or OTP comes and you are done.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
if you have CBDC,
Hmm.
similar benefits can be adopted.
Basically, the e-rupee is taking UPI one step further.
Yes, I would say that it is even far, far helpful than UPI, because for UPI you need internet. Abhinav, it's not that everyone uses internet.
Yeah,
In,
yeah. Lots of people don't.
it's my village in Jaunpur. Still, there are a lot of people who have mobile phones, but they don't understand the nitty-gritties of the internet. So I think the volume of digital transfer of money that happens in India, e-rupee will take it many folds forward, because exactly the people who are not yet taking benefit of it will take benefit of it.
Now, coming back to central bank digital currency, Ashirvad, how feasible it is in a developing economy like India? I mean, uh, what are the challenges? What are the advantages? How can we go about it? And what should be the ideal design of a central bank digital currency?
Uh, Very difficult, Abhinav, to answer this, but I'll try my best. Okay, so see, the benefit I told you, financial inclusion is a very important issue for developing countries, and if there is anything that can solve it, it's a win-win case. Now, the challenge, and it's not an emerging economy challenge; it's a fundamental challenge to the banking system of the whole world. What happens is, so that's why I was telling you that I'll come back to your credit card and all. See, if you simplify the whole banking network of today in any country, it is basically two-tier banking system. You have a central bank, which basically takes care of stability, which is basically saying that it maintains trust of the people in the currency. That's their core job. You call it whatever, inflation targeting, growth targeting, or all, that's the fundamental thing. So they do that. How do they do that? There are commercial banks between the consumer and the central bank. So that's why it's a two-tier system. In the two-tier system, there are two kinds of things. One is cash. There is a lot of cash transaction that happen. According to RBI surveys in India, digital transfer and all has increased manyfold, but still there is preference for cash. Specifically for transaction of volume less than 500, people prefer cash. So there is obviously a lot of cash transaction, which I told you that cash is the liability of the central bank. So the moment you do that transfer is settled. I give you 100, that's it. There is no settlement and all is happening. There is another thing, which is the digital rupee. So basically, you transfer some money from your account to my account using Google Pay, let's say. That's the UPI transfer. Now, what's happening is that's the another kind of transaction that's happening, and the source of it is a bank account. Like I told you earlier, that bank account, what is happening, because the source of that is bank account, that whole thing is liability of the commercial bank, not the central bank directly. How these commercial bank manages it? By fractional reserve system. उनके पास जितना deposit होता है उसका कुछ percentage they keep it with the central bank. But remember, it is never 100%. It's fractional. Okay. Now, what CBDC is bringing in the picture, and that's the big challenge that I was talking about, is that our whole system has adopted like that. It's working like it, and it's a well functioning system. Now just understand. Suppose कोई temporary insolvency issue होता है, या some challenges comes up where people are not losing the trust in the currency. What happens? Everyone would like to, if CBDC is there, then everyone would convert their money that is deposited in the central bank into CBDC. No one would like to deposit the money in the commercial bank. You're understanding the difference, because once CBDC comes into the picture, you have a legal tender in the digital form in your bank account, which is liability of the central bank directly. So you are transacting directly with the central bank. You don't need the commercial bank. Okay. Now, what happens if the business model of this commercial bank is challenged? Then basically you get a benefit that you're directly, holding the legal tender in the digital form. But the problem is there are a lot of value-added services that the commercial banks provide. For example, loans. Okay, and that is a very important form of economic activity. Loans are extremely important for economic activity in any country. So if the business of commercial bank is affected, if let's say their viability come into the question, you have to completely remodel the banking system. Now, one option is the people say that a lot of things that the commercial banks are doing that central banks can directly do. So just imagine there is after CBDC there is no commercial bank, but everyone is directly holding an account. Like commercial banks hold an account with central bank. You and me holding an account with the central bank, and then we are doing business directly with the central bank. But then there is a huge debate, and I am like if you ask me, I'm not in favor of this business model. There are a lot of reasons. One very good reason is you must have read The Use of Knowledge in the Society by Hayek. That, knowledge is decentralized. Commercial bank always understand the need of the people much better than a centralized system. So basically, if you have a centralized system, they cannot provide service as well as a decentralized system of commercial banks can do. So this is the biggest challenge, and that's why there are a lot of pilots and all. Some has failed as well, because this is questioning the viability of the central bank commercial bank, very very big time. So what are the other options? Like you said, the thing that I told you was this is called a direct CBDC model. So you are directly trading with the central bank. There are other two options which are indirect. So, you basically keep the same system, two-tier banking system, and you basically, the fear that everyone will convert its money into CBDC. Uske liye what you can do is you put a limit that nobody can hold CBDC after this amount of money, or you put a negative interest rate that if you have more than this, then what's the problem? But then there is a challenge there again, and that challenge is that if you want to hold a limit and all, then the anonymity of CBDC will be in question. People are, economists across the world want to see CBDC exactly like cash, just a cash in digital form. But if you want to put a limit or an interest rate or something like that, then the anonymity comes into the picture. And then the problem is that though CBDC will be a medium of exchange, a unit of account, store of value may problem hoga. Then people will not, hold it as a store of value. So that's the problem if you have the two-tier banking system with CBDC. Then there is some third model which people call the hybrid model, which is basically that at least in the beginning, there should be CBDC only for the wholesale transaction, that is the commercial bank's transaction with the central bank. But at the retail level, let's wait and see how things evolve. That's the hybrid model. So these are the three possibilities. There is no right answer to what is the perfect model. But if you'll ask me, second one, which is the indirect model, where you have the commercial bank and maintaining the existing system and issuing CBDC, according to me, is the best system. The first one is very, very, it's going to create a lot of problem, a lot of, mismanagement. The third one also, I don't think, if you just do it at a wholesale level, it is not going to give benefit to the common people, and then there is a problem. So obviously, according to me, the second one is the best one. But, I want to make one thing very clear, that there is a huge technological side to CBDC. So it has to be seen that how things evolve and what should be adopted. But at present, I'll go with the second model.
Yeah, interesting. We have to wait and watch as to how this thing will eventually roll out. But I think digital currency is the future. My last question to you, Ashirwad. What major disruption do you see in the financial system in the coming decade, apart from the digital currency, of course?
See, if you ask me, my fear is, again, I don't want this to happen, and that's the biggest disruption according to me. I think in the near future, the current system of two-tier banking will not be able to exist. Somewhere, like I told you, as digitization happens, my understanding is that there will be, a middleman will go out, and if you see two-tier banking system, central bank is technically a middleman. So as digitization progresses, I think this whole system will not exist. And the second disruption, again, it's my fear. I think that if things doesn't go in the right way, private digital currencies might become a much more important thing than what we are thinking right now. This is because, unlike what we all think, apart from the three characteristics, the social issue of money is very important. It's not, there are so many examples even in the recent time. For example, in Ireland in the 1970s, because of a labor unrest for 6-7 months, no bank was operating. So pubs of Ireland started their own credit system. And you will be surprised to find that the growth rate of economy during that period of Ireland was very high. So people were transacting because they had some kind of trust, and the financial system was working very well. Similarly, in the 90s, after the USSR was no more there, a lot of restrictions were put in by the government in Russia on some companies. A lot of austerity measures. What those companies did was they started their own credit system. And by 97, 98, almost 50% of intercompany transaction was happening on their own, not on the state currency. So if things don't move in proper direction, the second disruption could be that digital currencies, specifically backed by the big internet giants, can be a big thing. And that's why I think as soon as possible, states should come up with CBDC with a right format so that the stability of the financial system prevails.
Interesting. Let's see. I think the future is in flux because of technological disruptions, not just in the digital arena, but everywhere we see, right? Even in the manufacturing, we don't know what is going to happen 10 years down the line. But thanks a lot, Ashirvad, for your time and discussing this very important topic, because I think that even RBI is working on some concept of the digital rupee as of now. But thank you again, Ashirvad.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, audience, for listening to us. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and also join as a member if you want to support the channel. Hoping to see you soon. Thank you.